Sony began their expansion into Europe in the 1960s, with the initial foothold in Switzerland, then quickly expanded to London in 1968, Germany in 1970, and France in 1973. The initial structure which Sony adopted was a geographic corporate one. What this means for each of these international divisions is that each of these countries can operate independently in terms of purchases, distributions, networking, and operations. Basically, each of these divisions was multifaceted, and the level of communications amongst themselves was minimal. Like any other organizational structure, the structure Sony adopted has its own advantages and disadvantages. Some of the advantages may include the increase in flexibility, especially with product specifications. Another advantage is the reduction in coordination of activities on a global scale, because each of these countries handle their own logistics. However, this structure has its own disadvantages, due to the fact that each of these individual divisions has their own set of functional departments. Therefore, there is a duplication of resources for an organization as a whole, hence this can be seen as not so efficient. Another disadvantage that comes to mind is not taking advantage of the opportunity to share or leverage its competencies on a global basis. This form of corporate structure was indeed appropriate during that era in Europe, due to the fact that these countries were not yet unified, such as currencies, laws, and culture. Therefore, the need for flexibility in regards to legal, financial, and cultural aspects is indeed important. Prior to the introduction of the business teams, Sony Broadcast in Professional Europe was a European division that catered to the professional market as a function of Sony Europe, with headquarters in Basingstoke, United Kingdom. Due to changes in the environment, Sony's competitors grew strong, and its customers grew more demanding. Most importantly, Sony's customers expected service that required Sony's country operations to cooperate efficiently. Sony's structure at the time did not allow this, and thus the business teams were introduced. In order to cater to customer demands, Sony BPE was given control over country operations. Soon after, Sony BPE was divided into 12 distinct business teams that were in charge of specific products in their allocated regions. These business teams answered to business team heads, who were positioned in country operation offices in order to maximize decision-making power, and country heads who provided the business teams with operational resources. This matrix structure allows Sony to maximize the skills of their workers by spreading them out across regions and utilizing the workers' local knowledge and expertise efficiently. Also, business team heads were responsible for specific product goals, while country heads were held accountable for the overall performance of the business teams in their region. This dual focus allows Sony to focus on both overall performance and specific product performance. This structure, however, may be problematic as it lacks a clearly defined hierarchy. Each business team reports to two managers, the business heads and the country heads, who are assigned different tasks and held accountable for different measures. The introduction of a matrix structure is likely to cause problems related to role conflict, power struggle, and communication, because country heads involved with operational resources may have differing expectations and objectives than those of business team heads involved in team-specific operations. Employees are likely to feel confused or unsure of what needs to be done, resulting in role conflict. For example, country heads with control over resources may want to reduce costs, and business team heads may be concerned with the quality of their team's performance regardless of cost. Because of the stress and uncertainty, informal team leaders are likely to arise and a status hierarchy may emerge in business teams. Another problem is a conflict over resources and the tendency for business team heads and country heads to engage in a power struggle over resource allocation. A power struggle can harm organizational unity and an organization's ability to achieve a common goal. Because country heads and business teams have different objectives, they may struggle with allocating resources for their own causes. Both leaders further report separately to European headquarters, and therefore politicking may occur to gain top management support. Furthermore, it is likely that when country heads who are responsible for overall business team performance do not get expected results, they will increase the control over the matrix and their own decision-making power, potentially leading to a more centralized and less flexible structure. Now, with team members who are dispersed across countries in which business teams are operating, communication between team members is less effective and transaction costs may also increase. Sony's change in structure across Europe required an implementation of a new organizational mission. In order of this change to occur, Sony needed to change its organizational values. Firstly, Sony's terminal values would have to shift from its existing country focus to an approach that catered for greater integration across all European operations. In order for this to occur, instrumental values such as cooperation and cultural tolerance must be emphasized in order to diminish the mutual exclusiveness each operation valued. By attempting to change the values and working norms within the organization's environment, Sony ran the risk of facing a resistance from workers. Sony endeavored to reduce the degree of resistance encountered by transmitting a change in organizational culture through socialization tactics. The introduction of the Year of Graduate program in 1999 individualized role orientation at Sony. Graduates were encouraged to promote value and acceptance of integration and cooperation between operations. Graduates were exposed to a vast range of cultures in various countries in order to reduce restriction to exclusive norms. Sony also encouraged integration through supporting creativity and initiative. Disjunctive tactics provided graduates with more freedom in the way they behaved, rather than mentored to adjust to established norms. Individuality was praised rather than conformity. Sony expressed this by providing graduates with the opportunity to express new ideas and challenge existing organizational norms. This tactic gradually implemented a decentralized structure. Decentralization is important to the introduction of European business teams. The restructuring of Sony Europe meant that product group heads of country operations were eliminated and replaced by European business team heads. The power and authority possessed by workers in existing positions at Sony was then put at risk of reduction. Decentralization allowed Sony to reduce the power distance within the hierarchy and disperse responsibility to a wider extent throughout the firm. This strategy allowed Sony to reduce the perceived severity of changes and adjustments in employee positions within the organizational hierarchy, as the degree of power reduction was not as harsh. The issues arising from the introduction of business teams at BPE could have also been circumvented in different ways. Business teams within a country could attempt to coordinate their operations better via weekly or bi-weekly meetings, where business team heads can present their ideas to the country heads. Instead of having business teams and country teams both reporting to the European headquarters, what they should do is to consolidate these goals and strategies into a report which country heads can then pass on to European headquarters, establishing a system to track project performance that is unbiased only from a country head's perspective. Sony should also outline 10 fundamental tasks for each division to provide the foundation for a party's responsibilities. This cuts down on redundancy, helping Sony to cope with the increase of information. Sony could have introduced a new business team structure in stages to ensure a smoother transition to the new model. In addition to creating the Euro Graduate program, Sony should have also created a separate program for its current employees to educate them and get them in line with the new organizational culture. If Sony had done this, it could have helped lessen or even prevent the resistance they met from within the organization. Furthermore, Sony might want to look into rotating roles between country heads and business team leaders or engage in team building activities to increase the sense of understanding between the two departments. Sony may also want to find strategies to increase emotional intelligence within the culture of the organization to heighten organizational unity.